Well, you know the good thing about hitting rock bottom? There's only one way left to go, and that's up.
Hey everybody, good morning and welcome back to another episode of Discovering Myth Talk Show with the first ever series, Moth in Black episode 2. And like usual, how this series was inspired is truly based on what you saw in the video earlier. That is, it is inspired by a movie called Sync when his buddy tell him and motivating him that the best thing about hitting rock bottom, because the only way for you to go is going up. And today we have another awesome guest, and his name is Neal Williams. And before that, let me tell you a little bit about him. So right now, what I'm really happy about him is before who he is today, he had undergo tribulation, challenges, and obstacles appear in front of him, and he was kind of hopeless, and to a point that he really tried to suicide. But after that, things changed, and without further ado, let us welcome him to share more about his experience. Hey, man.
Hey, Vincent. What's going on, man?
What's going on? I know it's like a good evening, so I should be saying good evening to you. Yeah. Hey,
yeah, the time change.
Yeah, the time change, and now it's like 7:15 in the morning for me. But I'm really dope to listen to your stories.
I appreciate you getting up so early just to talk to me. So thank you.
No, I should be saying thank you to you because this is like a weekend for you to spend time with your friends, with your relative, and you spend probably an hour with me. Yeah.
Yeah, man. I'm glad to.
Yeah. So, probably you can start to do a little bit introductions about you.
Sure. So my name is Neal Williams. When Vincent and I talked for the first time, he told me a little bit about what he was doing. And what I really love about what you're doing, Vincent, is, everybody's got a story, and you're putting in the effort to go bring those stories out. And because for a lot of people who know me, what I am right now, I'm the general manager of a manufacturer in the lighting industry. I've got a corporate job, and but the real story is where I came from and what was going on, 10 years or so ago, what I do now. The most important stuff I do now with my life is outside of work, and with the company I just started, my coaching business. I do a lot of volunteer work, And that's really where my heart and my passion is. And so with the launching of this new company with Elevated Lifestyle Recovery or Academy, that's really what I live for. And so I think once we talk a little bit more, people understand what I mean by that.
Yeah, true. So just like you mentioned, the Elevated Lifestyle Academy is your passion, it's your soul, it's what you live for right now. Probably you can explain this to us. What makes you to to build up this academy for?
Well, it really started. So 7 years ago, I reached a point in my life where I realized everything I had become and everything I was living for was meaningless. And I was just hopeless and empty inside. And so I really cried out for help. And I knew that I had to change, and I didn't know how to do it. And so the journey began. The journey, the search for something more and the search for an understanding and for purpose, it began. And as I evolved and developed through this, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and I found this new life and I started to find purpose and I found hope, I started to want to help others do the same, because there's lots of people out there like me who are suffering like I was, and they're looking for a way out, and some of them don't know that there is a way out. So once I started to help people and I saw this response, I started to see, I was telling Kyle, your guest earlier when we were talking, I was explaining it to him, when I see this light come on behind someone's eyes and I see hope ignite, when I see hope come alive and it's born behind their eyes, that is what I'm living for. And so when I started to see that response and I was understanding that I did have a purpose and I could help people, I just went with it. And after doing that on a volunteer basis for 5 years, I guess, I decided that I wanted to turn that into something bigger because I want to reach more people. And the best way for me to reach more people is to turn that into a business and to really advertise it and just see where it goes. So,
Wow. Oh, so you mentioned that you share this idea with Kyle.
Yeah, and it's interesting how we met because Kyle and I are both on this journey. Of course, we're developing our coaching businesses and we're coaches and we're essentially, and you see a lot of people who are in the industry and they see each other as competitors. We're both in the same field, but it's not at all like that. And, or at least not for us. And so he reached out to me on social media and I responded and we started a conversation. We decided to get on a call one day and talk for over an hour. And now, this friendship's developed. And so we talk regularly and we have very similar goals. So it's just cool to find like-minded people out there who want to share what they've learned and share their experience and try to help others.
Oh, I see. That's so cool. Like how social media really is like pull people together.
Yeah.
That is really, really awesome. So just like you two, like you mentioned some part that about like because there are people out there who are suffer like you before and they do not know that there is actually a way out from that. So probably can share that. What kind of suffer did you undergo? Like during the process?
Okay, and it's real important that I explain this the right way because I'm not a victim. I'm not a victim of anything. At least I don't see it that way. When I was younger, when I was like 11, 12, 13 years old, really when I was about 11, I started dealing with some stuff. I didn't know what it was. I didn't understand what it was at the time. Later, I'd find out that it was depression, anxiety, and I was having a lot of nightmares and just some weird stuff that I didn't know how to explain. And so I didn't tell anybody about it, and I kind of kept it to myself. I saw some counselors because I was acting out and getting in trouble in school and stuff like that. But a couple years later, I started to learn about some things. I started to learn that there were substances, like there was marijuana, there was weed and alcohol and stuff you could do that I could either drink or get high, and it would change the way I felt. So for me, when I discovered these things, it was an escape. And when I would take these things, so when I would either drink, when I would get drunk, when I would get high, it was those feelings of anxiety and depression went away. And so it was an escape for me. And all those thoughts that I couldn't slow down stopped. And so I didn't have to worry about them. And it just became a regular thing. So as time went on, I became dependent on these things, and I wasn't addressing the real issues that were going on inside of me. So they just got worse and worse. I was just stuffing them down. And then not only were those problems getting worse, but I had adopted new problems. And so now I was addicted to all these different drugs, and I didn't know how to stop drinking. I didn't know how to live without being drunk or high. And so it just progressed. And like you mentioned earlier, I eventually reached a point where I didn't want to live anymore. And so I don't know if you want me to go into that as well right now.
Yeah. Probably you can take it slowly. So after that, what happens? Because you mentioned that you like drugs. I guess that drugs are the only way during that time where it really makes you that that you are problem free, and at the same time you adopted a new bad habit. A new problem again. Yeah. So from that point onwards, how is your life changing? Because I know that when you're taking drugs, you are very, like you said, you are very high. But at the same time, how do people around you looking at you when you're taking this? Do you tell people around you that you are doing this, or how?
So, I really went through phases, because when I started taking, substances, and when I was drinking regularly, I would hide it from certain people. I was playing sports for the first couple of years. So I was involved in team sports. So I couldn't really tell anybody, or else I'd get in trouble. And again, I was underage. So the stuff I was doing was illegal. Drugs are illegal no matter what age you are. But when I was drinking in middle school and high school, obviously I wasn't telling anybody. But gradually, I started to quit sports. I started to go to school less. So I was skipping school. And I think with anybody who really establishes a lifestyle where you're using drugs and alcohol on a regular basis, you start looking for people who are doing the same thing. So I kind of switched from surrounding myself with athletes and people who were doing healthy things to now surrounding myself with people who are partying and selling drugs and who are doing the things that I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. So, that's what you do. You look for people who are interested in the same things you are, whether that's good things or bad things.
Yeah, true. So that throughout the years that you are taking drugs, right? I'm not sure that do you sell drugs?
Yeah. So it wasn't. Some people get into selling drugs for the money, right? Yeah. Rightly so, because you can make a lot of money doing it. And of course it's questionable, it's frowned upon, it's illegal, but I had friends who were selling drugs to make money, and that was cool. It wasn't really all that appealing to me to get involved with it, because I always had a job. So I would work to make money, and then I would party. But I started using, my tolerance was going up, and I was using more and more drugs. Drugs are expensive. when you're doing them every day. So it began, I really just sold drugs so I could do drugs for free. So I wanted to have an endless supply of whatever I was doing. So I would really just sell them to where I could have drugs all the time. That was the only reason I started doing it. And it just became a tone. So I don't ever like to tell people, oh, I was a drug dealer. And it's not because I'm trying to deny the fact. I did. I bought and sold drugs, and, I'll own that. But I wasn't like some big time dealer. I was just a dude who was doing it because I was an addict and I didn't know how to live without them. So I had to figure out how to get them. And unfortunately, I was, I was promoting the use to other people. And that's unfortunately what happens when you live that lifestyle, is you don't think about what you're doing to other people. I was selling these things that were destroying my life to other people as they were willingly destroying their own life. Now, granted, everyone's life is their own responsibility, but it doesn't make it right for me to help them do that, So, yes, I was, but it wasn't like I was doing it to make money like you see in the movies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It wasn't like that. I was trying to stay high.
Yeah, because the more that you use it, right, actually the more dosage that you needed to make yourself high, right?
Right. Yeah. It doesn't really matter what you do. Any drug you do, you'll need more. If you take it regularly, your tolerance will build up and you'll need more and more and more. And when you're an addict or an alcoholic, you use more and drink more because you're chasing the first feeling you ever had, and you never catch it. You just keep chasing it.
So here's the thing, because I do believe that taking drugs is that's it is deemed by the society that it is something bad. And after that, how did I'm not sure, should I say this way, that how did taking drugs change your life negatively? Should I mention things like that, or how?
Yeah. So do you want me to answer? How did it change my life negatively?
Yeah, sure. I mean, that how it affected your relationship with the people around you, because at the point that I do believe that you mentioned you didn't share this. You are taking drugs with you are a drug addicted, but how it really changed your life negatively, like your daily life, and how it starts to show that how it negatively affected your life and your lifestyle as the time goes.
Yeah, the sad thing is, I think a lot of people who start to get involved with drug use don't really, your intention is not to be involved in a life of crime. Your intention is to have a good time and to feel better. And that's really all I was trying to do. Now, unfortunately, if you're taking part in things like this, if you're using, say you're smoking meth, if you're doing methamphetamine, you can't hang out with regular people. You can't go sit in a Sunday morning Sunday school class and smoke your meth. Like, it doesn't work that way. So you've got to be around people who are doing the same things. It's illegal. It's frowned upon. So you end up being part of a whole separate society. Now, there are things that go hand in hand. Drugs and violence go hand in hand. That's just the way it is. You're your own police in that environment. So if what you're doing is illegal, you're going to have to deal with people trying to take what you have, and you're living by their rules. It's just the way it is. Now, when you're under the influence, I know a lot of people say, okay, well, he did that and he was under the influence of methamphetamine. Well, don't say the drugs made you do it. Listen, the drugs didn't make you do it, no, but your judgment and your behavior changes dramatically when you're under the influence of these things on a regular basis. Not only that, when you're up for 5 days doing methamphetamine constantly, you're hallucinating. And
5 days?
Yeah. I realize that's not normal, but this happens. And there's a lot of, I mean, it's a stimulant and the high lasts for a long time. So you don't go to sleep. And as long as you keep using, you'll stay up for days at a time. And when you're sleep deprived, you start to see things. So those are just a few ways that it changes your life. It's not that you don't set out to do this. Like I said, your intentions were just to feel better and have an escape, but it really snowballs into something that you didn't ever bargain for. And before you know it, you wake up and it's been 3 years and you're just knee deep in this lifestyle. And it's really difficult to get out.
Wow. Just like time passed so fast that in the blink of the eye, it's just 3 years, right?
Yeah. I mean, I started, just messing around, having a good time because, again, it was fun for a while. In high school, it was fun. You don't have any real responsibilities. You just have to go to school and do your thing. You don't have any real bills. You may have a couple, whether it's your car or whatever, but you don't have kids. You're not married. You don't have a career. And it's easy to get away with that stuff. But there's a point, if you're an addict or an alcoholic, there's a point where it stops being fun. And if you have that disease, which I believe it's a disease, you can't just stop. You don't know how to just stop. And so it's not fun anymore. And then you're just doing it to get by. Time passes really quickly.
Wow. So here's the thing, but I mean that I do believe that in our last conversations, that you've been you've been to a rehab center, and after that being behind bars, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and after that, so that's the point. Actually, like I think is it the point where you were behind bars that things started to change, where you started to like, hey, I want to get out of this, or it's still prolonged after that you're getting out from the bars.
Okay, so when I was on my 19th birthday is when I tried to take my own life. That was when I had reached a point that I was so unhappy, and I just decided that this is all there was. I was a mess. I was a drug addict, and I didn't have a future. And so I took, a lethal dose of Xanax and drank a bottle of whiskey with it, and decided I was going to drive off a cliff. Tried to do that. My tire blew out, and I didn't make it off the cliff. It was just kind of a crazy sequence of events. And I drove home. After that happened, the tire blew out, I spun out, and I stopped on the edge of this cliff. And so I drove home on 3 tires. And the next day, my dad, saw my car parked out front, was like, "What happened?" I told him what happened. And so that was one instance where I was hopeless. I didn't know what to do. And so he got me, my parents figured out how to get me into a rehab facility. I went to this rehab facility shortly after. Now, this is right after I had tried to take my own life, and I was unsuccessful. I go into this rehab facility, and they ask you, when you go in, when you're admitted to a rehab facility, they ask you what you're taking, how much you're taking, and I lied about it. I didn't tell them how many pills I was taking on a regular basis because I didn't want them to know how bad I was. I didn't want them to know how much I was really doing because I was trying to make it seem like, oh, okay, I'm not that messed up. And unfortunately, me not telling them the correct information, they didn't medicate me properly to come off that stuff. So 2 days later, after coming off of all that cold turkey, I had a seizure, fell and hit my head, and my heart stopped. So my heart stopped, and we're out in this rehab facility that's like 30 minutes away from the nearest hospital. So they couldn't find the defibrillators, to revive me. So it took 8 minutes for the ambulance to get there. They revived me. And so I stayed in that treatment facility. They brought me back. So I didn't die. Obviously, I'm right here talking to you. So I didn't die. But, I did. My heart stopped for 8 minutes. The fact that I don't have any brain damage is a miracle in itself. And so they revived me. I got out of treatment 3 weeks later, and I was high that night. So, there were some wake-up calls, but I didn't really understand how to prepare myself for a life without those things. I didn't pay attention to what we were talking about in the treatment facility. Like, I didn't understand the 12 steps. I didn't understand recovery. I just figured, okay, well, if I stop using for 3-4 weeks, then surely when I get out, I'll be used to it and I'll know how to stay off drugs. And it just didn't work that way. And so that was an ongoing battle. I kept going to treatment for a little bit, or I kept going to county jail. And every time I got out, I started back up again, and it was worse than it was before. They call it a progressive illness, and it's because every time you go back, it's worse than the time before. And so, that event that I told you about was when I was 19 years old, and I didn't get clean until I was 27. So until 2013, and I had plenty of near-death experiences. I had plenty of overdoses that are undocumented. I should have been dead so many times. So to answer your question, there were several times where I was just hopeless and I thought it was the end, but it just never ended. And it was, that was the most exhausting thing about it, is I kept hoping that I would die, and I just couldn't die. And the one time where I tried to take my own life and I was unsuccessful, I felt so embarrassed about that. Like, I can't even kill myself right. Like, I can't even do that, and it was just like, I couldn't kill myself, but then some greater being could kill me like that, right. The 2 days into treatment, it was, so that was the first time I realized, like, when I look back now, I see that was God saying, you're not in control here. I'll show you who's in control. And so it's interesting to look back on it now.
Wow. Okay, let's say we fast forward to 2017. That's the time where you get clean, right? So
2013.
Oh, sorry. Oh my God, 2017. Oh my God. Okay, 2013. That's the year where you come clean. So what actually makes you to get rid of this drug out of your life?
Okay. So I started getting in legal trouble when I was 18. And when you get arrested over and over and over, eventually the government says, well, we're just going to take your freedom away and we're going to lock you up for a while. And so I kept getting in trouble. And so I had bonded out on some felony charges, and I went to court, and I went up and talked to the prosecutor or whoever, and they were like, go sit over there and we'll get to you in a second. Well, I was pretty sure I wasn't going to go home if I waited for them to tell me where to go. So I went and walked out the back of the courtroom instead. I decided I was going to leave because I knew they were going to put me in jail. So I left that day and decided I was just going to run for a while. So I went on the run for a couple months. And, by this point, I had one of the charges. I ended up in a stolen car with somebody, and we were running from the police and ended up in this high-speed car chase. I got arrested for that, bonded out, then got arrested because I had some drugs on me. A couple weeks later, went to jail. The second time I went to jail, the time after that, when I went to jail, I lost my apartment. So by this time, when I'm walking out of the courtroom, I don't have anywhere to live, but I'm still selling drugs a little bit. So I'm running around with a pistol and some drugs, and I'm just barely holding myself together. I'm just trying to get by day by day. And so I'm sleeping outside sometimes. I remember I slept in the bushes in the rain one time. I slept in the front of a Walmart in like the little toy cars that you put a quarter in and little kids ride. I slept in that for a couple hours one day. And so the last day I got high, I had some really good drugs. And so when you've been using drugs that long, it's really hard to get high. You don't really feel high. You just feel okay. This day I got really, really high and I felt good. Physically, I felt good. And I was sitting there and it was really pretty weather. And I was sitting outside and I was waiting for someone to come pick me up. We were going to go and make a deal. And I was about to get introduced to some people who were going to give me a lot of drugs, and it was going to be really cool. It was going to be a good thing for me because I was potentially going to make a lot of money and get a lot of drugs. And so I was looking forward to it. Right. But I was sitting there and I realized I had all these things that I wanted and I was completely empty inside. I felt so dead. Like I felt dead inside, just cold, empty, and lifeless inside. And none of my family wanted anything to do with me. Every relationship I had in my life was toxic. Like all the friends I had were drug addicts, drug dealers, wanted by the police. I had nothing healthy. And I looked up at the sky and I wasn't sure if I believed in God. And I remember I said, God, if you're real, I need you to help me out of this mess because I don't know how to get myself out of it. And that was the first time I prayed in a long time. Because again, I wasn't really sure that God existed. And so I said that prayer, and 3 hours later, I got arrested by a task force. Like I just got mobbed by these cops, and I ran. And when I was getting arrested, I realized that was the answer. That was the response to my prayer. So I was like, this is not what I meant. This is not what I meant. And I said, but when I got to jail that night, I made the decision. I said, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going to try and see what I can do with my life. I'm going to figure it out. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to figure it out. And that's when it started. And I was locked up for the next 16 months. So I was gone for like a year and a half from that day on. Yeah. But while I was incarcerated, it began, like the switch had flipped, and I was going to figure out, I was going to try to understand God, because I prayed and I said, God, if you're real, I need you to show up. He showed up. That for me, that was confirmation. Okay, so you're real. Now I gotta try to understand you. Now I gotta develop a relationship with this being, because he's pretty powerful, because he just sent this mob of cops and arrested me like that. Like he didn't waste any time. So that was when it all started.
And how I mean that after you 2013 you started to get clean. And I know that yesterday I had a conversation with Carl, and I do believe that this is something that I want to know. I'm curious about you, because like being jailed, being a convicted, and having a bad past, toxic relationships, and how taking drugs and selling drugs. How that when you started to work out, that when you started to work into this society, right? Do you immediately share your past with people, or you take it back and until to a certain point, that's where you started to share that you realize that I need to start to share my past to people?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because
So mine's a little bit different, because what I went through was, of course, there's the physical. When you're locked up, if you're coming off drugs, you have the physical recovery where you're coming off this stuff and you're kind of snapping out of it and you're coming to. And I really like what Kyle said earlier about when you've been doing meth on a regular basis for a long time and you just quit, your brain doesn't just start working normally. It takes some time. And I think they've done some studies and it said like 3 to 6 months before you have cognitive thinking again. That's 3 to 6 months before your brain starts working normally again.
Wow, that's long?
Methamphetamine. Yeah, that's what they say. Now, I still don't know if my brain works normally. I'm pretty sure that it still is weird to this day. I just think I'm permanently a little weird, but that may have been a problem before drugs. I'm not sure. But so you go through this process and, accepting that I have this addictive personality, accepting the fact that this is my life, this is what's happened, and that I'm going to move forward to it. So I really accepted that. So when I got out, I was starting from the ground up. I didn't have a college education. I'm now a convicted felon. I got a job at a car wash, not making very much money. And so I had to work from there. And I was pretty open about, I'm going and applying for these regular jobs. And so they do a background check. So I couldn't lie about it. They knew what I had done. I didn't have that option. So I was just open about it. I said, yeah, I've been clean for this long. I don't really do that stuff anymore. This is what happened. I'm trying to do something with my life. And, God put people in my life who wanted to give me a chance, wanted to give me an opportunity. And I took that very seriously. Every job I had, from the car wash, detailing cars, and wiping off windows, I did my best. I did the best I could every time I was at work. The job after that, I did my best every day at work. And then I got a better job after that and after that. And every single job, every single opportunity that someone gave me because they knew that I was a risk, I owed it to them to go above and beyond. And every time I did that, and they rewarded me for that, they honored that. And, that was the end of 2014, I was washing cars, and August of last year, I became the general manager of this company that I work for now. And the trajectory of that's not normal, especially because I work with individuals who have college degrees. I work with very, very intelligent people. And I have a lot of respect for the people I work with. But it's just amazing to me what can happen if you take every opportunity very seriously and you do your absolute best no matter what you're doing. God's given me some opportunities that I'm very, very fortunate that these people gave me a chance. And I didn't want them to regret that. I wanted them to feel good that they gave me the chance, because something I always remember, when someone gives me an opportunity, knowing that I'm a risk, knowing that my background says you probably shouldn't give this guy a shot. Yeah. If I prove it to them, if I let them know that was a good decision, they're going to do that with somebody else. So by me doing a good job and proving to them that they should have given me that chance means it's more likely that they're going to give somebody else a second chance. And I want other people to have the same opportunities that I've had, despite making some poor decisions in their past.
Wow. That is so awesome, because what you said, that like through you, people will see that, hey, even though you had a bad past, you making wrong decisions in the past, that doesn't mean that past. That doesn't mean that you are still the same person.
Right.
Wow. That is because this is things that this is I mean, I'm not sure is it happens in the United States, but mostly it happens here is that after people getting clean and they went back again because they have this kind of mentality that, oh, people don't want me, like people don't want to give me opportunity because I have this, I'm a drug addict, I'm going to jail, and but in your case it's different because that you are being frank with them that hey, I'm a convicted. But if you're willing me to if you're willing to give me this opportunity, I'll prove to you that you are never. I mean that I will prove to you that your decision of giving me this opportunity is right. Man, I really
Yes.
love that.
Well, and you know what else? So I'm glad you said that, because what I'm doing with my life now, this Elevated Lifestyle Academy, the whole idea of this is to let people know that not only can you do something with your life, but it does not matter what your background says, and it doesn't matter where you are. I want to use my story to let people know that it makes no difference. You can be whatever you want to be. The important thing is that you change the way you believe. You change the way you look at yourself. You change the way you live your life. If I change my actions and I change the way I think and I change my beliefs, my life's going to change. I'm going to change. But that you have to take action. And so that's why I've started to pursue this coaching, because a lot of people need guidance. And I encounter a lot of people who have talked to doctors and counselors and therapists who have told them, you can do this and you can change. And when they ask the counselor, like, okay, well, have you been through what I'm going through? They're like, oh, well, no. A lot of these doctors and counselors and therapists don't understand what addicts and alcoholics and people who have been through the suicide attempts and stuff like that, they don't know what they're going through. They've just studied it. So they're speaking from an educated perspective, which isn't bad, good on them for trying to help people. But I know a lot of people who that's not good enough. They need to hear it from somebody who's been there. And so since I've been there, it's really important for me to go back, remember where I've come from, and go try and pull these people up out of it. And that's what I want to do. I love doing that. It doesn't, when some people get away from drugs and alcohol and they quit partying, they don't want to go near it anymore. They don't want to go near people who are doing that anymore. They want to stay as far away as possible and just forget that it ever happened. I am the opposite. I want to be around those people. I want to be around those people, and I want to love on them, and I want to lift them up, and I want to tell them that there's a different way, and I want to show them how to do it. And I want them to see how I'm living, and I want them to see my life and how happy and fulfilled I am today despite all that stuff, because I want them to know that they can do it too. And I can't just tell them. I have to show them, and I have to lead them and guide them. And so that's why I'm doing this, because people need us to show them. They need to be shown and coached and led. And so, yeah, man, that's
Yeah. The part where you mentioned that when people get clean, they really want to get out from that circle far away, but it's different for you because you want to be with them. And the moment you said that, right, I have a goosebump. That because this is something very, very interesting. Because I do something very interesting because like a lot of motivators, coaches, and influencer, they will tell you that when you are up there high, you got to surround yourself with successful people.
Yeah.
But
No.
Yeah.
So I do that too. I do that too, because that's really important. For me, there has to be, so I have mentors, and I have people like Kyle and other friends who I spend time with on a regular basis. And we, iron sharpens iron. You get together and you lift each other up, you share some things and you make each other better. And then you break out and you go find the people that need help. So I speak to people who have more experience and more knowledge and more wisdom than I do. They pour into my life, and then I go pour into other people's lives. So it's a cycle. What I think is so there's a transition period where when you come out of a dark lifestyle, it's good for you to have a healthy distance between you and these folks. Okay, that's true. And there was a period of my life where I had to stay away from some people for a while. But once you establish a new lifestyle and you've really built up and you recover, as we say, once you've recovered and you really have a set of tools and a lifestyle and, a spiritual relationship, that's what I believe in. Once you have those things and you're well-grounded and you're stable, then it's real important for you to go back and help other people out of it. So yes, you're absolutely right. I surround myself with people who are more experienced and more successful than me on a regular basis, but I'm also going to look for people who need some help and need to be lifted up. So it's that cycle, man. Wow.
I mean that this is really awesome. This is really awesome because I'm not sure is it true or not, because I do believe that when people are getting successful, sometimes they just their vision changed and they just didn't go back to help those who need it. Yeah. And I'm really glad that you are doing this, man. I know that before this you are doing this voluntary, and after this it becomes part of your business, which you want to coach people on how, even though you have a bad past, it doesn't mean you are doomed.
Yeah, and please understand that I'm still doing volunteer stuff. There's a really important aspect to doing things for free. And that's because I don't want the motive to be wrong. I want my motive to be helping people to help people. Now, the business aspect, it allows me to help more people when I can devote more time to it. If you want to devote more time to it, you have to be able to pay bills. That's just reality. Yeah. And so there has to be a trade-off, but it's real important that I continue to do some things on a volunteer basis. That's just how I believe. I'm not saying that for everybody. For me, there will always be a part of my life that's strictly volunteer work, and that's sponsoring people through a 12-step program. That's never going to be paid work for me. That's for free and for fun, and I love doing that.
Yes, and I mean that before we end these conversations, mm-hmm. While you are doing this voluntary work, can you share with me your most memorable experience while doing this? While talking to people and coaching them. I mean, what was the most memorable experience that ever happened to you?
Okay, so there's a lot, but I will tell you some of the most impactful things that have happened to me. First of all, when you meet someone who's been trying to get this thing figured out, and they've been trying to get clean and they keep going back out and their life just keeps getting worse and worse. And then you work with them and it happens to be the time that they really get it and it clicks and they really get their life back. Being a part of that, because that's not me. That's something that God is doing through me. And when I get to be a part of that, there's nothing like it. When I got my life back, that was a level of freedom that I'd never felt before. A spiritual freedom where I was no longer, I just wasn't suffering anymore. But the feeling that I get when I'm a part of helping somebody else is better than that. And Being a part of that and having someone call me and just say, man, my life is just so different, and telling me about how good they feel. That's one thing. The other thing is when I get phone calls or text messages or instant messages from their family members, from their moms or their dads or their wives, those things, oh man, that'll make you cry. Because what God does through this is he brings families back together. And that made me tear up right now. When you see that happen and just being involved in that, it makes everything worth it. It makes waking up in the middle of the night to answer these calls. It makes making long drives to go pick somebody up from the street. Man, it makes it all worth it. It makes it all worth it.
Wow, man. I'm really happy that I can see that when you're sharing this, when you're being part of this part of this family, bringing families around, trying to get people clean and telling them, hey, there's still hope. There's still hope. Man, I'm really glad that I found you, man. I found you and have this opportunity to share it, to listen to your stories and share it to people. Man, I really love this. I really love this.
Thank you for what you're doing, because everybody has a story, and you can't really do anything with your story unless people are willing to listen. And what you're doing by pulling that out and broadcasting people's story, this is helping people, and good for you for doing it, man. Thank you for what you're doing. It's awesome. And I appreciate you having me on. I'm excited to be a part of this, man. It's fun.
Yeah. I'm really thankful that you say yes, like to this, to be part of this series, because I just found out that your stories definitely fit to this, to this series that I'm doing. But thank you, man. Even though it's just a short session, but I really learned a lot from you just by sharing, and I can see that your enjoyment while doing this Elevated Lifestyle Academy and how you help people out from there. That is, I can see your pure joy, man. I can see that.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and let's say next year probably we can get back together again like a few months later and see how we're doing. Yeah, and I really love to keep in touch with you and to listen to your stories. And especially
Absolutely.
especially the part where you achieve one of the new things in your life. I'm really happy for you, man. I'm really happy.
Thank you. I appreciate it, man. It's exciting.
Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of these sessions. And remember from today's session, no matter what is your past, no matter what kind of decisions you made in the past or any mistake that you did in the past, always remember this: it should not doom you from having a good life and strive for a good life. And our guest here, Neal Williams, proved it. And right now he's the general manager in a manufacturing company. And this shows that no matter when people give you this opportunity, right, you should grab it seriously and took it seriously. And I see you, and I see you guys, later, in another episode of Moth in Black with another amazing guest. And I see you guys next time.